Joining us is the president of the Registered Nursing Association, Mr. Edie Stewart. Pleasant good evening to you, comrade.
Pleasant evening, comrade, to you and your listeners.
Thank you, and
Thanks
viewers.
for having me.
And viewers, it's always a pleasure to have you. Of course, the Poo Report, which of course I know you and your entire team are waiting on, which is from the investigation of the newborn deaths at the neonatal intensive care unit of the Port of Spain General Hospital. The attorney dealing with that, of course, is former Attorney General Anand Ram Logan, and he is calling for a copy of it. Of course, the minister has made it quite clear that the investigation will not be swept under the carpet, and therefore we should expect full and frank and prominent disclosure of this report in the public interest. You know, we really and truly hope that this is made public, unedited, undiluted, because this is something that touched the hearts of so many citizens out there. What's your expectations? I mean, not jumping in, of course, making any sort of guess or anything like that, but what's your expectations?
Oh, Mikey. Well, firstly, let me say the report, while we are thankful that PAHO would have done extensive work and from being within the health sector, you know, a lot of work would have gone into it. You know, while persons may be under the impression that the investigators came down for only 3 days and they only took 3 days to do their investigation, they were just one arm of the investigation team. Majority of the documents were actually sent up to PAHO International Desk to be reviewed by other experts. So we're going to be getting a very comprehensive document which would really be able to guide and give some, I wouldn't even say closure, but give some sense of understanding as to what would have transpired. But notwithstanding that, I think the country must understand that whatever PAHO recommends, 95% would not be new to persons working within the health sector. 95% of what they're going to recommend, if not 100, is not going to be new. Because we want to remind persons, PAHO was here before, following similar instances before, similar deaths before, in San Fernando General Hospital, to be precise. And PAHO would have given a number of recommendations. And PAHO was part of producing a document, which is what the association is focusing on currently. That document speaks to health sector accreditation, having a health sector council, passing the Health Sector Accreditation Act to make sure all our healthcare institutions are monitored, supervised, evaluated, to ensure, not to hope they do what they're supposed to do, but to ensure they do what they have to do. And if they don't do it, that any particular private or public healthcare facility will be closed down. That is the role of that body. That was envisioned since health sector reform in 1994, 95. It was debated in Parliament in the 2000s, and a whole draft amendment bill was created. The policies are already there. And unfortunately, this was actually brought to Parliament by Colum Imbert when he was Minister of Health. I don't know if people remember that. So what we are talking about is something this very government was in favor of, health sector accreditation, because these problems are not new to the health sector. And the same way, you cannot go to any post-secondary or tertiary educational facility in Trinidad and Tobago with it not being registered with the Accreditation Council of Trinidad and Tobago. All post-secondary and tertiary educational facilities must be registered with that organization. It is the same thing. All private and public health care facilities ought to be registered with this body once the government does what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the fear that many people have. The fact that there's going to be something that, well, they made it quite clear it's not going to be edited, it's not going to be watered down, it's not going to be, compromised in any form or fashion. But there's always this feeling that somebody's going to be made a scapegoat. And based on what you're saying, the history of all of these things that were already outlined, and I've known for years that you have been fighting for these things to be implemented. It's sad and unfortunate that we have to have a situation with these dead babies for these issues to once again rear its head and say, look, listen, these are the things that we spoke about before, and these are the things that were not put in place.
Yes, yes. And the list is long, but the starting point is that health sector accreditation bill. And we are calling on the government. We have made that call the day after those deaths with those babies. We would have made that call. And shockingly, following a press conference which the Minister of Health had with the media, it was after we were making that call ad nauseum on the radio stations, in the media, as the solution, because that report is not the solution. Health sector accreditation is the solution. When we have been making that call, and we actually got a reporter to ask the minister where he is with that particular act, it was surprising to hear that he was not familiar with that particular piece of legislation. It was very surprising and alarming that after we were making all those calls, all this time, that bill is nowhere closer to it becoming a reality. So there was dramatic cleaning and sanitizing and putting everything in place, making sure the wards are properly staffed temporarily, sending home a bright junior doctor who was head of infection control to appease the public to show that somebody was sent home. And we will end up no better. My fear is that we will end up no better having gone through that terrible experience of losing so many babies in such a short space of time. Avoidable deaths, you call it. And we would not have progressed to ensure it doesn't happen again. So sadly, if the current Minister of Health and the future Minister of Health, because it's taken so long, most likely even if he was to begin the process now, unless there's a real commitment by him and the government to complete that entire process, then sadly we may not see that bill coming to fruition, and the council that is to monitor all healthcare institutions coming into being during this tenure, and we'll have to hope now a next government takes it on. And let me say too, the UNC, the government in waiting, has also played an instrumental part in producing the documents during their tenure. So we have an unusual circumstance where both the PNM and the UNC is in agreement of this bill. Not one of them is in disagreement of this bill. Yet we are unable to move forward with this particular piece of legislation.
And why do you think so, Mr. Stewart? Why do you think that this bill is not made a priority and put in place, to deal with these things rather than us having to talk about it when incidents like these take place? Why? I mean, why shouldn't it be made a priority?
I could only offer opinions, but one must understand the private health sector industry in Trinidad and Tobago is a multi-million-dollar sector. So that's the first point. The second point, there are a number of doctors running these facilities. Well, most of them are doctors who are the directors of some of these private healthcare institutions. And they are gods. They are gods walking on land. And all politicians are indebted to these doctors. I kid you not. I see it on a daily basis when there's disciplinary action to be taken to some of these senior consultants. They would take a hands-off approach. They would not even consider it because they would have called that particular doctor at some time to get some favor. So could you imagine implementing a body that could shut down the private sector, a particular private hospital who is not operating to standard? And there are several of them who are not operating to standard. Several of them who don't even have registered nurses on their staffing. And they have persons straight off the street. There are several deaths occurring in these hospitals. If one was just to, and it's very difficult for anyone to get redress within the private healthcare industry. You get redress in the public sector, but it's very difficult to get redress in the private sector. And a recent case you would have seen, Ms. Nunes Teixeira, she had to bring down consultants from abroad to testify against local doctors. So it's a number of issues, and we must be honest and tackle some of these issues to make sure our citizens benefit.
And I understand where you're coming from, but you're talking about a culture where, people would always say, listen, there's different rules for different people, different policies.
Yes.
And it's always about anything that has to do with the common individual, the average citizen, then this is substandard. But when it comes to dealing with people on a different level, the elite or wherever it may be, things are a lot different in that case. But not at the expense, and it should not be at the expense of someone's health, and especially at the expense of where we are losing babies because there seems to be some sort of imbalance there.
Let me give you an easy example.
Quickly, go ahead.
Sorry?
Go ahead, quickly, as time is running down. Go ahead.
Well, one of the main things we have been asking for, which the Health Sector Accreditation Council could assist us with, is having minimum patient-to-staff ratio, or having enough nurses to care for the patients themselves. The literature is replete, the evidence is replete. If you don't have the required number of nursing personnel, the patients will suffer. You'll have increases in death rate and increases in adverse events. So if that Health Sector Council was to come in, it will mandate both public and private institutions to hire more staff, hire more nursing personnel to make sure patients receive the best quality care. So the government is watching that down a barrel of a gun and saying, oh, we'll have to hire more persons. The private sector is watching that, oh, we'll have to hire more nurses. So you can see the pushback to preventing such a bill from coming to fruition. So it seems we at the association will continue to lobby until this bill, hopefully with the support of persons like yourself and the public calling for this particular legislation, we will be successful in the not too distant future.
Thank you so much, comrade. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Keep up the good work. Best of luck to you and your entire team, and we'll be checking in with you periodically. Really, we await the report. We really and truly await that report. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.